It was once as Canadian as, well, beer. Labatt's. For more than 100 years, the brewery grew and thrived from its roots in London, Ontario, into a national and even international brand. And hey, they once owned the Toronto Blue Jays as well. But that story doesn't end with a Canadian company dominating the global beer industry. Quite the reverse. Matthew Bellamy is an associate professor of history at Carleton University, and his new book details what happened. It's called Brewed in the North, a history of Labatt's, and he joins us now for more. Matthew, why haven't you been here in such a long time?
It's been too long, Steve.
How long? I mean, the last time we had you here was for your book on the polymer history.
Yep.
And that was how long ago?
2006.
And that's not the last book you've done.
Unfortunately, yes.
Well, good. Long overdue and good to have you back. Let us tell the story of this beer that everybody knows, but certainly won't know the backstory of. And it all starts with a guy named John Labatt. Who is he?
John Labatt was the founder of this brewery. He was born in Mount Melnock in Ireland in 1803. Grows up there. Mount Melnock at the time, of course, was a rural place, and it just gets caught up in the Industrial Revolution at that time. And so he sees this city transform. He grows up there. By the time he's 27, he decides, I'm going to move on to bigger things, and goes to the largest metropolis in the world, which is London, England at the time, and he settles in Bankside, which used to be where the rich debauched, of course, during the 1600s. Some of your viewers might travel there for vacation, and that's where the Globe Theatre is now, and the Tate. Anyways, when Labatt arrives, of course, it's industrializing, and there's large breweries around, and he gets a job as a clerk. But he can't move up. Because of his Irish background. He comes from poor Huguenot stock, and that works against him. And so his professional life isn't going very well, Steve. But at that time, when his professional life isn't going very well, his personal life takes off. He meets a woman by the name of Eliza Kell, who probably would have had no time for him, except for the fact that her father has a financial difficulty and is looking for some sort of suitor to take care of his daughter and his wife. And Labatt says, I'll do that. And so they wed, and then they move to Canada, come to Upper Canada. He gets into farming and has a kind of midlife crisis, Steve, at the age of 45. So, sorry, just a bit younger than that, 42. But it's 1845, and he decides, I'm going to look for another business to get into. And he wants to get into manufacturing because of all the things that he experienced in his youth. It's kind of like being a high-tech baron today. You know, that's the thing that you want to be in. He was thinking, I want to be in manufacturing. And so he goes back to England and looks for a business to buy into. What's fascinating, however, is the fact that while he's over there, he kind of has a crisis. He starts to doubt himself. And it's fascinating to me when I look over the documentations at the University of Western Ontario, how these doubts come through. Because if you think of the people that own businesses today or start fabulous businesses, the Bill Gates, the Steve Jobs, even the Henry Fords, they all seem to be visionaries. They know what they want to do and they're full of self-confidence. But Labatt was full of doubt the whole time through. And so he's writing these love letters back to his young wife, you know, basically saying, I've been too long in the backwoods to make my mark in this world. And in one of the letters, Steve, he writes home and says, I wish I was home with you, you know, tell me what's happening there. And she writes that an old friend of his, a guy by the name of Samuel Eccles, had gone into brewing. And he writes back after that saying, I should have done that. I would have been pretty good at brewing, you know. And she takes matters into her own hands, walks down the road, says to Sam Eccles, can my husband buy into your business? They get it approved, and the Labatt Brewery is off.
Off to the races.
Yeah.
Well, you point out that in the book, the success of the Labatt Brewery during those formative years was determined by the environment in which it operated. And the environment in which it operated was London, Ontario.
That's right.
What was so special about what was going on in London at that time that would have prompted this?
Absolutely. A couple of things. First of all, it is blessed by nature. You have wonderful agricultural land. If you drive there, you can see the farms expanding. The soil turns a darker shade, right? It's just wonderful agricultural land. And so you could grow the things that you need, the hops and the barley. So that's great. Also, the water supply's wonderful for making the British styles, ales, porters, and stouts that Labatt would ultimately make. So nature is definitely working for them. The other thing, though, at the time, Steve, is that the military is based there. And if you look at where all of Canada's original brewers are, they're always by military garrisons, because at the time the military was receiving, the people in the military were receiving enough of money to buy about 5 pints a day. And so enterprising brewers like Labatt or Carling or Alexander Keith on our East Coast are trying to tap into that. And so they're brewing those beers, selling them to the military. So that's what London has going for it, because the military is stationed there.
Now, of course, Labatt's predates Canada, but as Canada becomes Canada and then the railway opens, tell us how the impact of the railway had an effect on this company.
Huge, in the sense that here was Labatt, who always had a belief in technology throughout his life. It's one of the defining features, one of the things that leads to success early on. And so he harnesses the power of steam and rail to break out of the confines of London. What's forcing his hand, of course, is the military takes off out of London, Ontario, to go fight the Crimean War. And so now he's without this marketplace. This clientele that he had disappeared. And so he's thinking, I have to find a new market. And so he utilizes the railroad in those years after he takes over the brewery. He becomes the sole proprietor in 1854, runs it himself until his death in 1866, by utilizing the railroad to spread out all over Ontario. There won't be any national brewers in Canada until after the Second World War, but he comes to conquer the regional marketplace earlier than most because of the railway.
Let's go back a little before the Second World War. Prohibition. When Prohibition kicks in, what do these guys do?
Right. So Prohibition comes into, for those people that don't know, the viewers, Prohibition comes into existence in Ontario on the backdrop of the First World War. That's when we get it across the land. And so in Ontario, it comes into existence in 1916, lasts until 1927. Under the terms of the nation-forming BNA Act, there's a division of power, of course, and the provinces have the power to regulate the retail sale of alcohol.
And it was different in every province, right? The years for Prohibition.
Right, exactly. So in PEI, you have it from 1901 to 1948. In Nova Scotia, you have it from 1916 to 1930. In Quebec, they put up with the Noble Experiment for about 8 months and say, we're out. So it depends on where you are. So Prohibition comes along, and Labatt's at that point had been skirting the law to a certain degree by mail order business, where they would move their beer out of the province, specifically Quebec, and then mail it back in. But the prohibitionists, and this is in 1916, 1917, cry foul. They say it's a shell game, right? And so they go see Borden. Borden closes that loophole.
The Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister, yes. And closes that loophole. At that point, they have to move into making temperance beer, which is near beer of 1.25 ABV. So a regular beer today is about 5% ABV, so it's very watered down. So that's what they're selling initially. And during the war, when people are looking for a long-distance way to martyr themselves for the cause, we're willing to put up with that, right? We're feeling like we're making a sacrifice. The boys overseas are ultimately making the ultimate sacrifice, so we can suffer a bit here at home. The problem is that the veterans start to come home in 1917, 1918, and 1919, and they had never stopped drinking overseas. And so they come back and they say, I thought we were fighting against totalitarianism. And we have this environment where we can't even have an old-time schooner with our mates in our favorite drinking hole. So they won't touch this stuff. So they start slipping into the blind pigs, which are the illegal drinking establishments across the province and across Canada. At that point, Labatt really suffers. And in fact, they're on the edge of bankruptcy. So this company that had been in existence since 1847 is going under. And there's a hastily arranged board of directors meeting that takes place in London. And the company's still family owned and controlled at the time, Steve. And all the family members are there, but there's this one outsider, the general manager, who's a hard-nosed Irishman who had cut his teeth selling tobacco and whiskey in the United States. His name's Edmund Burke. And he listens to what they have to say. And they say in their board minutes, and you could go read them in the University of Western Ontario, they say, unless something very unforeseen occurs, we're going to have to close down the brewery a year hence. They're done. And Burke says, whoa, whoa, whoa. Let me make you an offer. Let me run things. Don't ask any questions. Give me 10% of the profits. And I promise you guys will not only survive Prohibition, but you're going to thrive. And he takes it over. And the family members, they shoot off. They barely come to the brewery, Steve. They go up to their cottages. Some of them go down to the United States, but they don't ask any questions. And he turns it into one of the best bootleggers in Canadian history. Buying whiskey from Belleville, where the Colby distillery is, which, by the way, becomes the largest distillery in the world in 1922, which should give us some idea of what's going on. And then he makes full-strength beer that he's selling to the veterans and others in those blind pigs in the province. Here's the big thing, though. Where is he sending this? The Volstead Act came into existence, which is full prohibition south of the border in 1920 and lasts until 1933. And so Burke, who again cut his teeth selling tobacco and whiskey in the South, in the United States, realized there would continue to be a thirst for booze. And he realizes if he could just get hard liquor and beer across the 49th parallel, there'll be a market for it. And that's what he's doing, using fishing vessels and the like down down at the Windsor docks.
Now, once upon a time, if you wanted to sell beer in this country, you had to make it in the province in which you sold it, right?
Right.
So Labatt's at some point has to have national aspirations.
Yeah.
How do they handle that?
So after the Second World War, now, because of what Burke does, they emerge from Prohibition in 1927 as one of the largest breweries in Canada, up there with national breweries in Montreal, Molson in Montreal. So fast forward to the end of the Second World War, there's a few big players, but you know, there's a lot of brewers, Steve. There's 62 brewers in Canada in 1945 producing 159 brands. And a guy by the name of E.P. Taylor, Edward Plunkett Taylor, right, yep. Or Excess Profits Taylor to his critics, he decides, you know what, this is the time to go national. And he thinks, well, how do you do it, you know? And he looks to the model south of the border where you have Schlitz and Anheuser-Busch and Pabst. And they had done it by building huge facilities in small Midwest centers, large Midwest centers like Milwaukee and St. Louis, and then shipping it out using the railroad. And he thinks, okay, can we do that in Canada? He says, no, we can't for the following reasons. The distances are too great. There is a quota system in effect in various places, right? There is also the tariff, the interprovincial tariff on out-of-the-province beer, right? And that worked out to be about 30%. And so he figures you just couldn't make money unless you owned brewing facilities in the various provinces where he wants.
Take a second to point out that we may have had free trade with the United States before we had free trade among our own provinces.
Exactly.
That's strange.
It is
strange.
But
anyway,
that's
keep going,
right.
Sorry.
No, absolutely the case. And so that's what's forcing E.P. Taylor's hand. He's realizing if I'm going to sell my province in Alberta or Manitoba, I'm going to have to brew it there. Yeah. And so he starts buying up existing breweries all over the nation and rationalizing their operations, reducing the number of brands, picking a few flagship brands that he can sell across the nation. And then Labatt's realizes we better follow suit or we're going to go under here. And so they become what Alfred Chandler, the Harvard University economist / business historian, calls a fast follower. You know, they're quick to follow E.P. Taylor's lead.
Well, it didn't take long before, I guess it was the 1980s, we essentially had an oligopoly in this country. 3 brewers, I guess it's Labatt's, Molson's, and O'Keefe, or whatever they're called, Canadian Breweries Limited, who are essentially selling like 90% of beer, maybe 95% of beer in the country. And they do it through something called what we used to say back in the day was Brewers Retail, now the beer store.
Right.
How did that whole, it's not a monopoly, but it's a virtual monopoly. How did that come together? Yeah,
so they're controlling this. So at the back end of Prohibition, of course, the government wants to make sure that it's got some sort of control over the distribution of alcohol. And so the brewers are allowed to set up brewers' warehousing that becomes the beer store, right? And the LCBO comes into existence. That's the way that booze will be distributed from here on out. The brewers could also sell it from their factories, by the way, but other than those 3 ways of getting your brewery out into the market, there was no other way. So that's in existence. But these 3 brewers come to monopolize the Canadian brewing industry by buying out breweries across the land, right? And then rationalizing their operations. And then finally, by giving us national brands. But the national brands don't really exist in Canada until the 1960s. The first national brand is given to us actually by Labatt's with Labatt Blue. And they reimagined one of their Pilsners, which was considered, that wasn't selling very well, Steve, in the 1960s. And it was deemed to be too European because of the various logos that they were using. They had the arms for the city of Pilsen on it. They also used a jovial European character that was cartoonish to promote their beer, a guy by the name of Mr. Pilsner. And so it was seen as too European, and it wasn't selling to the group that they needed most. Working class individuals in Ontario. It was selling quite well, their Pilsner, out west, but it wasn't selling well in Ontario. And so they reimagined the beer, rebranded as Blue, put the maple leaf on the label, appropriating the symbols of national identity. And this resonates with Canadians across the nation. So it's actually the first national brand that we get, and that's not until 1969.
Once upon a time, these 3 brewers were all Canadian.
Yeah.
They're not anymore. And Labatt's, of course, is no longer run out of London, Ontario. It is now part of a massive international empire.
Yeah.
What's it called? InBev Anheuser-Busch?
Right.
It's part of that.
Yeah.
So it is a It's a tiny chunk of a multinational company.
Yeah.
How did that come to pass?
It comes about in 1995 when they're bought out by Interbrew, which traces its roots all the way back to 1366. But here's the thing. They were about the same size when they got bought out. And Labatt's had conquered the Canadian marketplace. As you pointed out, they control about 95%. It ranges from 95 to 98, but they're in control. 1 in 5 beers sold is a Labatt Blue in Canada. The money is pouring in. They decide, and maybe this is the Canadian corporate psychology during the 1970s and 1980s, it's better to be a big fish in a small pond than a smaller fish in a big pond, right? And so instead of doing what they do best the world over, producing beer, and they did it very well, just as well as the Anheuser-Busch's, right? And going out and conquer foreign markets, they decide we're going to get into chocolate with Laura Secord. We're going to get into the Blue Jays that you mentioned in the opening. We're going to get into the Discovery Channel. We're going to promote the concerts of the Rolling Stones and David Bowie and Pink Floyd through CPI, their subsidiary. And so they diversify out of beer. As a result of this, they make so many bad expenditures. They don't have the money that they need to make large purchases abroad. Also, there's a kind of conservative culture at Labatt's, and so they're not really looking abroad for those opportunities until it's too late. When they do make the play, they try and break into the Mexican market, and bad luck works against them because there's the devaluation of the peso that undermines their investment there, and then there's vulnerable for a takeover. Interbrew comes along, and they fundamentally say, we are brewers. We are not owners of baseball teams. And so they de-diversify the company. Right? And now it's in that clutch of beer companies that AB InBev owns.
I know you're an academic historian, and you don't approach this necessarily through an emotional lens.
Yeah.
But do you think there's something sad about the fact that Labatt's is no longer a family-run business in London, Ontario?
Yeah, very much. Absolutely. And it's sad to me because they won so many awards, Steve, through the years. Labatt's, when it was family-owned and controlled, took a great deal of pride in the quality of the product that they were producing. They are like the craft brewers today. If you meet the craft brewers, they're not really motivated by the money they're making. They just want to do their art. Well, John Kinder Labatt was the exact same way initially, and then his son was as well. Right? They just wanted to brew, and they wanted to have as many people tasting their beer as they could. They go off and they win international awards. John Labatt II takes the brewery down to the World's Fair in Philadelphia in 1876, and he beats out Bass and Pabst to take the gold medal in brewing there, and they win multiple awards after that. My point is here, they're a great brewer. They were a great brewery into the 1970s and the 1980s. They're producing beer that is just as good as Budweiser.
Are you just as good? Yeah. Blue is way better than Bud. Are you kidding? That Bud tastes like, what they say it tastes like.
Right.
Well, anyway, I won't say it because it's a family program. But there's no comparison in taste, I didn't think.
So it's sad to me in the sense that when I sit in a bar in Portugal or wherever, and you have your Stella Artois there or your Budweiser, it would be nice to drink a Labatt.
And it's the same company that owns both.
Right.
Yeah. Have I got 30 seconds left? I got 30 seconds left. Let me do this. The beer store is still owned by those 3 brewers.
Yeah.
None of which are Canadian anymore.
Right.
Do you find that weird?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. That's the short answer to a short question. As always, you tell a great story. This is our history, and while the ending may not be a happy one if you're a Canadian nationalist, it's still a great story to be told. Matthew Bellamy, professor of history, Carleton University. Brewed in the North is the book, A History of Labatt's, and it comes with this wonderful coaster with the name of the book on it. That's a clever marketing device. Well done. Matthew, good to see you again. Thank you so much.
Great to see you. Thanks, Steve.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.